Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another Riverside Ramble. Today we're, again, not beside a river, but we are with someone who spends a lot of time on them, so that's near enough. I'd like to welcome to the channel Jamie.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, very nice. That's great. Yeah.
I've been loving your introduction to all of your videos. It's so wonderfully British. I'm sure it's doing wonders for the American market.
Well, I mean, that is hilariously, I do have probably about 50% of my viewership is in the States. So
Yeah.
for those people particularly, Jamie, who are you? And where are you? Where are you from? And what's your background in kayaking?
Okay. My name's Jamie Greenhalgh. I am a whitewater coach, which to people who I'm just meeting at a party who don't understand what that means, I tend to say that I'm a bit like a personal trainer for whitewater kayakers. And then I also have, I kind of work in two different planes. One is being a whitewater coach and guide. My business, Paddle 365, works all the way through the year. As the name would suggest, in Welsh whitewater primarily, but we go out to Scotland a few times a year, go to Morocco once a year, out to Nepal quite regularly. So there's a fair bit going on, and I'm really I'm just in love with working with people on the river, with skill development coaching and giving people amazing days out. I also have another side to what I do, which is what I began to say earlier, which is that a little while ago I launched a new business called D River Kayaking, which is very much targeted at the give it a go session,
Cool.
just
Yeah.
to kind of enable people who've never done anything like it before the best possible introduction. So for that, we use Duckies. We take them out on a river, like a nice flat, calm river, just near me, and we give them as good a time as possible. And I can introduce people to whitewater kayaking without tears. It's guaranteed. Yeah, I've been doing it for quite a long time. The old taking people paddling thing, and there's nothing I love more really. So that kind of brings me up to date. I live in Chester, which is really just on the edge of the Welsh border. So I'm in and out of North Wales all the time, and the river in Chester is where I do the introductory stuff. And yeah, from this base, I'm able to meet a huge number of different clients around the country, and get really wet really regularly.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so here's an interesting question then. Duckies. Do you find that, you say no tears, do you find that you've had people who have done an experience in a ducky and who are then converted and are like, great, well, I'm gonna give a hard boat a try? Do you find that happens?
Yeah, it totally happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
No, definitely. The reason that Duckies happened was that because it's not a thing in the UK particularly.
No.
It's very, very gradually growing, but in
Yeah.
the States it's big.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
your audience will know. And I had been working. I'd been working already, partly for myself and partly for other providers. And regularly, you get these like, "Oh, I've not really tried it before, and can you do introductory lessons?"
Mm.
And because these people would book in a intro to whitewater kayaking and kayaking together in the same thing, and they really want the experience of going down rapids, but they also want a first lesson that is going to
Yeah. Give the fundamentals.
give
Yeah.
them some instruction that feels right. And the
Mm.
problem is that actually it takes a bit of time to develop the coordination and the boat control to ride rapids successfully. So you could end up with these real moments of the people that you're taking out just being like humbled in a really
Mm.
serious way,
Mm.
where they get out on the water and they kind of go, I thought this was going to be like, quite easy. I thought it would be hard, but I didn't think that I literally wouldn't be able to hold myself in a straight line. I didn't
Yes.
think that I'd be terrified of flipping upside down every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you do get the occasional, like, it becomes very emotional for these people, and the reason for it is just that the introduction is pitched far too high up.
Yes. Yeah.
So really, I think to give a really good introduction to whitewater kayaking, you've you've got two choices. You either scale the environment down, you go to the easiest possible venue, somewhere that is pretty flat. Maybe there's some ripples, maybe it's flowing, but it's flat, and give them the opportunity to get some distance under their belt, to learn to turn the boat, to learn to keep it going straight, to hold their balance, stuff like that. So if you're not going to turn the environment down, then you need to turn the equipment down, and that's where putting a ducky and putting someone on top of their boat rather than inside it, and giving them a real feeling, because it's a glorified inflatable like lilo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's been on one before. They can instantly feel at home, and so we try and start our sessions from that basis, really.
Yeah. That's great. That's so good. And do you find that has an impact on, I suppose fear level is the right word, on people's fear level in terms of swimming as well? Because presumably you do have people still swim out of a ducky, even though they are a bit more stable.
Yeah, you totally do. But I do think it makes a big difference that the head never goes underwater.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't have that trapped feeling, presumably.
Absolutely. Yeah, the trapped feeling is gone. And yeah, for people who are just very new to this, I don't think anyone's really prepared for their first whitewater flip unless they've been doing it in flat water for quite a while. I think you can really traumatize people with a whitewater flip before you're ready. So so yeah, it has a really big impact, because you are just falling off of a lilo and you're getting back on it again, which is goes a good way to also explain why it is that stand-up paddleboarding is the most accessible part of paddle sports that there has been in recent years.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that you've taken quite a big leap into, haven't you? Personally,
I've been taking tiptoes into it for quite a while. I wouldn't say it's a huge leap, but I do quite enjoy it. I did my stand-up paddleboard coach award with Paddle UK last year, so I'm now qualified to take people out and teach them whitewater paddleboarding, which is a very fun little side thing. I wouldn't call myself like a full-blooded whitewater stand-up paddleboarding expert yet, but I know a thing or two now, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's another thing that you can introduce people to in a way that's really beneficial. Yeah, I kind of did it partly as a bit of coach development. There's a guy, I don't know if you've ever met him. Do you know Anthony Ing, who works on the River Dee? His company is called Stand Up Paddleboard UK.
Okay.
And I think he's one of the best coaches and providers on our river.
Cool.
So I just kind of wanted to learn from Ant, and I knew that I was due another bit of a coaching update, and I thought I'll do it in a different discipline, and I'll have a great time. And I wasn't disappointed at all. We had a brilliant time. Ant's a top guy. Big up stand-up paddleboard UK.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. Do you find that? Because I'm all for cross-disciplinary learning. I think that's something that's really necessary for a solid progression in kayaking. Do you find that SUP is still adjacent enough? Does that make sense? Like, because it's not just cross-disciplinary. It's basically a different sport. But do you find that there are still enough parallels from a kayaking standpoint as well as from the coaching standpoint?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, the biggest evidence of that is if I put you really hot whitewater paddler onto a stand-up paddleboard, you'll be leagues ahead of a beginner paddleboarder, even
that is
a
an
proficient
assumption, but fine.
paddleboarder who has never been on a whitewater river, and that's because you understand the terrain, you understand how to use the tactics that you would use to take advantage of currents and to limit the forces that are applied on the board at any given time, and to use them when you need to. So yeah, you'd immediately have a really big advantage because you understand whitewater. So there's a huge amount of stuff that we can gain between the two. For looking at it the other way around, what can I learn from paddleboarding? There's quite a bit, I think, in terms of balance and agility and fine tuning that I really feel like I'm gaining. Partly it's just a fun learning process that I really recommend you to play with.
That's cool.
But I think SUP is a game where if it's done badly, you can look like an absolute fool, but you're still having fun, so you don't care.
Yeah.
But if it's done well, you can look like an absolute ninja.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And the journey to ninja status, which involves a lot of understanding your body weight positioning, managing your height so that you're getting your center of gravity at an appropriate level for the rapid, so that you're not falling in from too high up, etc.
Yeah.
It's as simple as like putting a little bit of extra weight through your front toe at the right moment. So to like depressurize the fin at the back so it doesn't scrape over the rocks and knock you in.
Yeah,
there's all sorts of little things that go into it that are fascinating. But I suppose it's just becoming an adaptable paddler and an agile thinker and an agile paddler on the water. I think it's all great experience. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, agile thinker. I really like that. So as much about the response time in your brain as anything else, which probably as kayakers we can be quite lazy about, and you see that in your own paddling, don't you? Or you can see it in your own paddling, where perhaps errors compound, and it's all because there wasn't a reaction to something that should have happened at the top. Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that as whitewater kayakers, one thing that really, really helps us is if we can really develop adaptive skills that are pretty, instead of us being really, really good at the set piece move, I'm gonna leave the eddy, I'm gonna glide across to my takeoff point, I'm gonna take the perfect keystroke, and I'm gonna fly. Right, that's the set piece move. I've rehearsed it in my mind. I know I know it to the nth degree. It's gonna work. But I think if we're also really good at reacting and getting ourselves back on path, or rolling up and finding a new target to make for, all of those fast-paced decisions that flow. That's something that I think is very easy to get less good at, but is a real skill that can be practiced in the whitewater environment in the same way that you can practice a set piece.
Yes, yeah. Would you say that those skills are likely to deteriorate more quickly than something like a set piece, sort of set up in your brain?
It's interesting. To that question, I am not really sure of the answer to. I don't know enough, possibly, about skill fade and the way that works.
Sure. Yeah.
To give you a proper one, but I think that your adaptive skills in a boat are more likely to. I think they're more likely to suffer on a bad day as well.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
You're. If I'm going down, there's a river near me called the Ogwen that is one that tests the reactive skills of a boater really, really well, because it's very continuous, it's very fast.
Yeah.
It's a river of a new decision a new target every few seconds, really, because it's
Sure.
just moving
Yeah.
so quick, and it's quite steep. And I know that if I get on that river and I'm not well practiced, I'm not kind of maybe it's the first rains of the season. I really notice it,
Yeah.
and I find that I have to take a lot more breathers in the eddies. I need to try and like reconfigure my mind quite a number of times just to make sure I'm really in the game.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. I want to go one of two ways. So you were talking about SUP being something that is, I don't know, the way you're describing it to me seems like it's a very unforgiving craft. Or maybe that's the wrong word, but liable to punish you for small changes. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I mean, I would class myself as a whitewater SUP intermediate.
Okay.
Right. And I know I've also just said I'm a qualified whitewater SUP coach, but that's also the nature of where the standard is in the UK at the moment. Anyway, there's a few true experts, Anthony Ing and a few of the others down in Devon and up in Scotland.
Yeah.
But the market in whitewater SUP coaching is getting people from a stage of absolute beginner to absolute intermediate.
Yeah. Sure.
Is it an unforgiving craft? It certainly can be. I know it takes me a little while to get my head properly into the game, but then once I do, I can have these moments that feel like absolute magic, like skillful movement that give me pure joy.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what keeps me going back to it.
Yeah.
There is a nature of unforgivingness if you in the same way that kayaking can be hella unforgiving if you let it.
Yeah. Well, that was why I was wondering. Because, So what does that say about perhaps the boat choices that we make to assist us in learning?
I mean, that's something that I can get onto in another section for sure. Like, we need to when we're learning to paddle, try and have gear that's going to set us up for success for sure. And help us to learn. It's definitely true that if you get something that's just too forgiving, too much of a steamroller, that say you buy your large Macno and you're not actually that big of a person to begin with.
I didn't think you were going to name names, but you have, and the Macno was exactly the one that was in my head.
Cool, that's cool. I mean, I love the Macno, to be fair. I'm just thinking, like, if you're light in it as well.
Yes.
Because the boat is just bobbing over the surface so well, you're not going to be able to tune into the feedback from the river to your movements.
Yes.
So, you drop a rail into the water, it actually probably won't react in the way that a boat that's well fitted for you should.
Yeah.
So you don't get that instant. It distresses the learning process, because learning is supposed to be all about like new input, different outcome.
Yes.
Yeah. And if new input doesn't always create different outcome, if it really, if it is just basically floating too high, basically running, if the boat's running without giving you much feedback from the current, then it can kind of distress the learning process a little bit. Now, on the other hand, a Macno for I've already named the Macno, so I'm just going to roll with it.
That's great.
For someone who is the perfect weight for it, who's the perfect level for it, especially in an environment where they're pushed, is a fantastic thing, because it's gonna give them a bit of it's going to strengthen their mindset, because they are more competent in that environment, less prone to flipping upside down. More able to handle themselves. So there's only so many lessons you want to learn in a day, in terms of
well, only so much that the brain can handle in a day, isn't there?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I think what makes a good kayak for me, for a learning paddler, which I think was the question you were going to ask in a moment.
That was kind of what I was
Yeah.
toying around with. Yeah, yeah.
It's got to be a boat that is feels stable. So it's got that stable base, okay, underneath you. So a little bit of width, a bit of a flattish kind of hull rail to rail is going to really really help you.
Yeah.
Because it means that when you settle your balance, when you're not doing anything, you're not already trying to like still balance and still do stuff to keep you upright. So just as a very basic starting point, a boat for a developing paddler needs to feel stable to begin with.
Yeah.
And then after that, if it's got some rails that you can use, they can be soft. But if it's got edges that when you put them down into the water, you feel the steering effect that they have, that's a really, really big bonus. If those edges are too trippy, it kind of undermines the stability thing. But it's very possible to have a boat with a low profile, like an Axiom, or a Z1, or a Firecracker even, with a wide base that is also not that trippy, because it's got the agility, the maneuverability of having a low profile in the water. So it's so you've got that feeling, but also you're able to get feedback from the river, and you're staying stable. So honestly, that is my my recommendation, my go-to at the moment for developing paddler. Is I'll go, if you can find one, get an Axiom. Also, consider a Burn. Again, it's the classic kayak for developing paddlers, I feel. But one of the things that is really common with these boats is that they have a nice wide stable base. They have rails that you can engage into the water, and they are not so fast and long on the water line that you really really commit to all of your lines and have limited control in the rapids to change course. So it's got to be kind of loose as well. And it's that ability to be loose, which is why I say Axiom.
I can't fault that as an argument. Axiom was my first boat, and it was great.
Sorry, Piranha.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. That's great. So leading on from there, you're talking about that kind of the mental agility that those sort of twitch changes in the sup make. Would you say that for people who are pushing towards the intermediate level, thinking about a boat which is going to tend more that way, in terms of being that little bit more sensitive to weight position, those sorts of factors, do you think that's more important as you start pushing towards the intermediate or sort of expert level in a boat?
I think you're due a conversation with someone who's a true stand-up paddleboarding expert.
Oh, sorry, I mean in kayaking. Just taking that as a parallel.
Oh, I see.
Would you say that there is a parallel there?
Yes, I think.
Or can I stick with my Axiom and still have a great time? I mean, because I would argue yes.
I think you can stick with that boat for as long as you keep finding it fun. At some point, you may want to get a bigger boat so that you can feel more comfortable. Feel more comfortable on your local grade 3-4 section. Now you can still develop your skills to that level in the boat that you had, but there are some advantages to having a lot more, or a reasonable amount more volume that you can get. So after that point, you may decide that you're gonna really enjoy getting a scorch or a reactor, or even a burn if you want a baby step in towards that. But it means that you're gonna be able to boof a bit easier. You're gonna find it easier to carry momentum, and as you develop your ability to commit to and stick a line, the ability to kind of be really loose on the whitewater and detach from a line and change course really easily will become less important, because you'll be better at picking your lines and getting into the right position with. And that's where you can start to really nail a creek boat. So in my opinion, beginners do need to probably stay out of creek boats for a little while, because they're not good enough at picking and sticking their lines. And what'll end up happening in the creek boat is, although they are like steamrolling through things, they're steamrolling through things and into the next thing, and it's that lack of directional control, because if the boat was looser, if the boat was able to change direction a little easier, it'd be back on course. Now, I know that Piranha have just addressed this with the reactor, and I think that's really, really cool. Whether a developing paddler is going to be good enough at developing the body awareness to sit back and sweep when they want to disengage the hull, I'm not sure. It'll be one of those things that once you've seen a few newer paddlers using their reactor and looking at how they paddle and seeing if that emergent talent comes out through the capabilities of the boat, that'll be really interesting to see if it happens. You know?
Whether the boat naturally fosters that, or whether actually that's a skill that needs to be fostered elsewhere and then can be brought into that. I think the answer is probably going to be it'll be possible for the boat to foster that. But it might take a little while, and I wouldn't read it as red. In a way. A yes and possibly.
It does look really sick.
Have you tried one yet?
Coming out the factory tomorrow.
Oh,
Is
really?
it tomorrow or? I've been waiting for it. I made a mistake and ordered a custom color, which put me right at the back of the queue.
Nice. You were talking about the Ogwen earlier, but what is your favourite UK river, and why is it the Maudak?
Why is it the Maudak? I think you're referencing I think it was a social media debate that was possibly put on as a response to was it as a response to your video about the best river in the UK, the East Lynn?
Yeah, obviously.
I was like, obviously not. It's not even the best river in
Devon.
To be fair,
controversial statement.
I have run the East Lynn, but not for years. Devon's not my region, but I love North Wales kayaking. I think if you always had the perfect conditions in North Wales, driven by the rainfall, people would travel from all over the world to come paddle what we paddle when it rains. And the Maudak is my top pick, and I've got right on my soapbox about it in the past. But that's because it has a bit of everything, and it's got enough length to allow you to really get in your flow. So unlike a lot of our other rivers, you're committed to the section for a good length of time. Hour or two probably. And you're paddling a section of fast-thinking continuous whitewater with really interesting bends and pillows and boofs but
just to be clear, every single boof is a left-handed boof on the Maudak.
Well, it depends which angle you come at them from. But a lot of them are, to be fair. But I'm sure that
I am very much taking the mic.
But then it's also, as well as having that fast-paced, fast-thinking, continuous whitewater, it's also got some really cool drops. It's got a decent-sized waterfall with an awkward, craggy entrance to begin with on it, which always gets the heart racing a little bit, and sometimes gets you walking around. It's got It's got some other really cool drops and slides on it. There's always something new to think about. So so the Maldac is my top pick as like a great UK white river running adventure.
Yeah. Would you say the Maldac wholesale, so not just the upper Maldac? Because I think the lower Maldac in high water is one of the most unique sections in the UK in terms of the feel, the big volume feel that you get on the lower Maldac when it's really really high.
Been on the lower Maldac and felt like I was, in the Himalayas.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Because it gets really really big, huge wave trains and big boulder fields and
yeah absolutely.
So it's a great run. It's a great run. That whenever it really rains and I've got my day off, or when it really rains and I'm working and there's clients who I can show down a section of it, I'm always really really keen.
Yeah, that's great. In that instance then, what would you say, what are you looking for in an environment for your clients?
What am I looking for in an environment? Well, I guess I'm going to have to start off with who they are.
Of course, yeah.
Because that's how you, if you're going to have a good time on the water as a coach or a river guide, that's where you have to start.
Yes.
So you've got to start there with a little bit of figuring out who they are and what it is that they like about kayaking and where they want to go, what they're driven to, and then I can start to find an environment for it on that basis. One of the questions is, am I coaching or am I guiding? Because that has a really big difference as well. If somebody comes to me and says, I've got a few days, it's really rained and I really want to make the most of it, answer some dreams, then I have to assess and take their existing skill level and then find rivers that are in the perfect challenge zone for them. So in that context, I go out and I've got a set of clients. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try them out on something that they would say to me that they would feel pretty comfortable with, and make my own call on that. And then we can build up through the run. But on a guiding day, the perfect environment for someone who is kind of already tested and up for it. Sorry, excuse me.
Bless you.
The perfect river for someone who's tested and up for it is one where they wouldn't be able to access it on their own unless they were with a really tight-knit group of friends who were really up for it. So they're really taking advantage of me as a professional river guide.
Yes.
And however, they do have the skills to be directed through it, and that's how I can give some really amazing times and share some really fantastic trips with clients on the water. On the other side of it, if somebody comes to me and they say, I really want to take advantage of this summer's training opportunities and learn to make it so that once the rains come and it's all go, I want to make sure I'm bomb proof. I've got a solid booth. I've got all of those skills in the locker. Then we go somewhere that's pretty comfortable for them.
Yes.
So we go somewhere that's pretty comfortable for them, and then we find ways of making it challenging. And we can do that through a mix of sessions that are based on me giving them challenges and them working on their existing skills to try and meet them, and throwing in curveballs that mean that they have to flex their adaptive paddling muscles. Or we can also, if there's something that isn't coming out in the course of me creating hard moves and challenges and trying to work with them to make it, we can also go back to kind of more technical coaching where I'm helping them to develop a stroke technique, for instance, and then going back to applying it.
Yeah, amazing. Do you have people who are approaching you saying, well, I want to do X river? Because I think this is something that I've found, obviously, by where I've ended up in the world and by choice, limiting myself to a river, saying basically I coach on the East Lynn. Inevitably, you get people saying, well, I want to do the East Lynn. Fine. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that someone is at that level. Or how do you deal with that or approach that in a way that is sensitive to somebody? Because people set these expectations for themselves, or maybe they have paddled it in the past, but that was 10 years ago, or whatever that might be. Have you got any words of advice?
Absolutely. So people will use rivers as milestones,
of course,
for sure. And as the dream is to paddle a Fairy Glen is the classic one that I get from my clients. Because it's the local river that is the advanced whitewater test piece in the area. And I've been asked a number of times if I'll take a group down it. Usually not on the day. Usually it's, would you ever take me down the Glen? And I'll sort of go, maybe one day.
Ever?
But I mean, I suppose it's a different thing from you, where actually that is the river, it is running, and you can start kind of. You have to have that conversation there on the day almost. What I think is always a useful thing to be able to do is to have a test piece area, to go, oh yeah, we can look towards paddling the East Lynn. Let's go to the top slabs. Oh, I don't know this section, but there was a stretch of grade 3 from Brendan, wasn't there?
There is. Totally.
And so if there was someone who was a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure, then you might go, right, well, perfect introduction to the Lynn is we're going to go and do this slightly easier section of it, and from there we will we can have a bit of fun and figure out like how much fun to fear you're having. What's the fun to fear ratio, and then we can figure out. I might at the end of that be like, oh yeah, you're definitely ready to come with me past Long Pool, but maybe not.
Totally. Do you think that varies depending on the nature of a river? So if a river is continuous, and that once you're in, as it were, versus something where every single move, say, is a set piece, and you could get to each move and go, how about this? Or I think you should probably just walk this one, or have a look at it. And do you know what I mean? Would you say that would factor in?
100%. Yeah, and I think you're asking me because it would.
Sure, I know.
But yes, it's so that the classification of continuous to a river, or rather than pool drop, that. I suppose the whitewater grading system gets brought up really regularly, and I think the only improvement that could really be made, maybe not the only, but an improvement that could be made is just a really quick classification that says this one's continuous or this one's pool drop. And that makes a really big difference, because a stretch of continuous class 3 whitewater that doesn't really let up can cause you a lot of problems. Whereas a section that is grade 4, but with some really big rapids, but with flat,
you pick up the pieces every time.
Between, like the Reactive, the swale. They're all rivers with big rapids that that a beginner could paddle to the top of and away from the bottom of. Pretty much. Yeah.
Totally.
So yeah, whether something's continuous makes a really big difference.
Yes.
And would way rather paddle, take a group of shaky paddlers into pull drop grade 3-4 than
Yeah.
I would continuous solid grade 3.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I suppose I ask. I know that came out from a coaching conversation, but I suppose I ask for those who are listening who are seeking to be self-supporting, self-sufficient kayakers. You know, as you say, the grading systems don't say that, and so actually, if you are self-supporting and you aren't being coached, and you're approaching a new section, for example, the guidebook doesn't tell you whether it's continuous or pull drop by a word.
That's one thing that I feel that a guidebook should tell you,
yes,
to be fair.
Yeah, it might tell you in the description, but that might take a little bit of deciphering, given the way that guidebooks are sometimes written. And so then people having the awareness that you should approach these different types of river differently. I suppose that's what I was getting at.
Oh yeah, no, it's a very worthwhile talking point, really, isn't it? And it also draws to my mind how it feels like guidebooks with decent river descriptions have sort of gone out of fashion these days. Regularly groups are using the River app and River Predictor, and they're using two online phone gauges. River Predictor has a description, but the River app, as far as I'm aware, doesn't. And so what they're getting is...
The River Predictor one is a paragraph maybe for a river, which...
Maybe, if that, I'm going to say a
sentence,
possibly two. So you've definitely got to be wary that you're not missing out vital information, such as, is this stretch pretty continuous whitewater at that grade, or is it something that is going to be attackable for a group who aren't solid at that grade already?
Yes.
Yeah. Back when I was a student, we used to use UK Rivers Guidebook, which was an online source with huge conversations on it and lengthy descriptions, and some of it was a bit off topic, to be fair, but you after a bit of homework you knew for sure what you were getting into. So I would definitely encourage that.
Yeah, well, I think, and that resource still exists. It might be, some information might be fairly out of date at this stage, but there's probably an awful lot of very valuable stuff in there. And if especially you're looking at doing lesser run sections, probably I would argue, looking back at information that might be potentially the last time someone ran that section, UK Rivers Guidebook is a fairly good place to look.
Or whatever your detailed guidebook,
an older archive. Yeah.
Especially because these sections don't have river gauges and therefore are not going to appear on the online thing that only shows you the rivers that have gauges, which I think has been stymieing adventure paddlers for a little while, because when you look at the map, it just looks like you've got way less options than you actually do.
Do you find that you have reduced in what you do? Because I think I have.
The variety of what I do.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say probably I have. Last winter I tried. I made a bit of an effort to try and do a couple of new runs that I'd never done before in my local area, and I did the Goidel and the Gine.
Okay.
So
those are tributaries of the Maudak, is that right? Or the Gine is?
The Gine is the trib of the Maudak. Yeah. Which I was like, well, if it goes along the same geographical lines as the Maudak, there's got to be a classic.
Yeah.
It turns out the Gine is not a classic, I'm afraid. It's quite ditchy.
The Gine is the one that confluences just below the Redder Maudak, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, it was a really cool adventure, and I'm glad I did it. Just exploring with a couple of other friends, but that was the box that it ticked for us. It didn't tick the box of skillful movement and joy.
But it
was
ticked
more like
it ticked
was
adventure.
it ticks the adventure box
Okay,
for sure.
that's good. That's good.
And the Goidle was good fun as well. It was an adventure, and it's on the opposite side of it's in the valley between the Maurach and the Cleda.
Okay, yeah.
And it's got a couple of cool big booths on it, which is always nice to discover.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a beautiful little mini canyon around. But the other thing is, once you've done a few of these, you go, these were amazing for the adventurous experience that I've just had with my friends, but I probably won't be rushing back. And you do come back to the idea that the classics are probably the classics for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. We have limited ourselves a little bit, and I've started to become much more. I'm much more likely to paddle the classics that I go to all the time, because I know I can guarantee how good they are.
Yeah.
But I do have to. You do have to appreciate the the adventurous itch that sometimes needs to be scratched by doing something new.
Yeah. Do you think that is primarily an issue of technology, and maybe younger people coming into the sport, therefore just having no awareness that there is more out there, or limited awareness, or is there something? I mean, maybe it's both. I don't know. Is there something psychological or maybe even emotional in us that says, well, this is easier, or this is a known quantity, that I know is, this is excellent, so why would I settle for something that might not be excellent, even if it's an adventure?
I think there's probably a number of things in it. I think you probably hit the nail on the head in one of them, which is UK river paddling is scarcity plays a really big factor. I know that it's rained today, and I know that I've got whitewater for 2 days, because I'll have one day where it's big and one day on the runoff.
Yeah.
So I need to prioritize my time.
You said that, and I immediately said today in my brain. Yes, which is so stupid.
Shows our psyche, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've got a weather app that sends me an email when it's raining a certain amount over North Wales.
Very nice.
So I ideally never miss a river day, unless I'm busy.
Yeah.
But which is the worst, because the email is going, big day on the Maurach coming up. It literally says that to me. I'll get an email that says, big day on the Maurach coming.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, going back to that scarcity thing, when you do have limited time, you do want to prioritize your favorite sections. You want to prioritize what it is that motivates you to go paddling at the time. Now, I phrase it like that because I'm kind of acknowledging my motivations for paddling. There's a few different things that go into it. One thing is the social aspect and spending time with friends on the water.
Yeah. One
thing is the joy of skillful movement, and the other thing is the adventurous itch. And I think that the most important of those for me at the moment are options 1 and 2. And here and there, I also know when I need to pay some attention to the adventurous itch as well.
Yeah.
And so for me at the moment, I go, right, it's rained hard. I need to contact my Bezzy mates, and I need to see who's up for doing some paddling at a standard that I think is going to be really fun and technically satisfying. I've become really big on the joy of skillful movement as a phrase.
That's a great phrase. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to one of the biggest things that I get out of whitewater kayaking.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's funny you should say that. So for the first time last week, I tried surf skating.
okay.
And I've been surfing for years, but I had never surf skated, and so it was completely new to me. And my only experience of skateboards prior to this was longboarding in Germany with some people who were very, very capable, and I was not, and it was a terrifying and horrible experience. And so I think I had this huge amount of fear and trepidation and an expectation that I was going to be really bad at this. And got on, and it was one of those experiences of pushing through those barriers and simultaneously seeking to gain some of the physical skill that was needed, and then experiencing that light bulb moment of, oh, my body's suddenly doing the thing it needs to do, and entering into a flow state with it. And I think it's the first time in a very long time that I've had to go through that mental process of a learning something like that, and pushed into the, I suppose, same thing. It's the joy of skillful movement. Now, well, skillful maybe not so much, but at least something of the skill, if not artful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, all things are relative, aren't they? You know,
Yeah, totally.
A beginner paddler can still feel
great.
the joy of skillful movement.
Yes.
It's
Totally.
just it's relative to what they were doing before, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Relative to what their perception is of what feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's also something that generally you learn to appreciate more of the more experienced you become as a boater on the water.
Yeah.
So the more experienced you become, the more experiences you have of what really nice felt like.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when you start, like, I now have a really strong picture, and it's partly a picture and partly a feeling that I can link to. This is what it's like when paddling feels at its best. And for me, that's probably the most addictive thing about whitewater kayaking, is that there is true challenge, and there's also true skill to be applied to it. That when you can make those two things add together and come up with something that feels great, there's almost nothing more satisfying.
Yeah, that's interesting. You talk about it in those terms, and I think in my head you say the joy of skillful movement. We've been talking about that as in the learning process, and I think, oh, so when you're first learning, the picture of what is the joy of skillful movement is quite broad, and then as you start gaining more skill, those become smaller pockets within a broader. Does that make any kind of sense? But actually, the way you're describing it, actually, the further on you get, almost the broader that seems to become, because you're able to access that skillful movement and the joy that it produces more consistently.
Absolutely, I think that is the case, and newer paddlers, if you ask them what they get out of whitewater kayaking, newer paddlers are far more likely to say adrenaline than more experienced paddlers. I don't know if that's something that you notice yourself. But,
I think adrenaline only comes in if I've got something wrong nowadays.
Right, exactly. You know? Whereas, I mean, for newer paddlers, they are experiencing adrenaline spikes because actually the game that they're going through is different to the game that we're playing. They are very much more likely to be, pitting themselves into the unknown. They're conquering demons. They are, they're going down helter-skelter rides, and they're holding on to the bottom, in a lot of cases. So they actually are finding thrill through taking a leap sometimes.
Yeah.
and that thrill is really addictive for a while and is really amazing for a while. And then the more skilled you become, obviously the less adrenaline you're going to get out of doing those things. And that's where we start to, on the journey of the learning paddler, we start to go from an adrenaline addiction into an addiction to the joy of skillful movement.
Yeah. Yes. So do you think there is a risk then? I know you're saying it is a law of diminishing return in some senses, the adrenaline. Would you say that there is a risk then of people pushing too quickly? If that adrenaline seems to diminish, pushing too quickly to find the thing that will produce the same effect?
I guess the thing that gets in the way of it, right? So if you've got a developing paddler who is loving the thrill of getting into whitewater, pitting themselves against the unknown, and going down the helter-skelter ride, developing their skills at the same time, but their victories are, oh, I'm so happy that I did that rapid. It's not, I'm really happy with the way that my boat feels at the moment. It's,
yes.
I'm really happy that I did that rapid. They're still on that pathway, which is the thrill-seeking pathway that happens at the same time as developing the skills.
Yes.
Now, generally, people segue from the thrill-seeking pathway to the to feeling the joy of feeling skillful pathway as they become more experienced. And one of the things that makes that happen is they start to feel some hard knocks.
Yeah.
And adrenaline stops being fun.
Yes.
Which happens at some point in the class 3-4 transition. Is they will start to understand that if they keep jumping out of the plane and hoping the parachute will ignite, not ignite, that's the wrong word.
There's something wrong with your parachute.
No.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with this parachute. But yeah, you get the picture. If they stay in the same mindset,
if that's
they're
the
going to
rubric,
take more hard knocks.
Yes.
And along the way, hopefully they've also realised that there are other things about whitewater kayaking that they really enjoy.
Yeah.
The adventurous aspect, the social side, the thrill of being skillful in whitewater, immersion in nature, and that it isn't necessarily only an adrenaline game for them anymore.
Yes.
And at that point, they can make the switch from gradually from being a thrill seeker to being someone who engages in whitewater kayaking that doesn't hurt them. I'm not saying that they have to. It's absolutely fine to continue to push scary stuff and to take leaps here and there. But at the same time, at some point, someone has to slow down so that their skills have the time to catch up. Because, like you say, you're an experienced whitewater kayaker, and someone who paddles at a really high level. You only want to feel the adrenaline when you are. I think it's something that comes in when you're taking a leap.
Yeah.
When you're taking a little bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And at an advanced whitewater kayaking level, that's mainly waterfalls. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that waterfalls don't involve skill. They involve a tremendous amount of skill. At the same time, we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't know that at the base of a big waterfall, anything can happen.
Yeah.
We get deck implosions. We get heads ramming into cockpit rims. We get all sorts of nonsense, paddle failure. All sorts of nonsense happens at the base of those falls. So even if you're really, really good, there is a little bit of faith that happens in there.
Definitely.
So I feel like I've rambled a little bit.
No, that's great. I think I was just thinking you were describing all of those different things that hopefully come in that learner's journey, and I was like, man, you paint such a compelling picture of why kayaking in whitewater is attractive. So I think that's a great place to round up. Really, you've painted a fantastic fantastic picture of why kayaking is not merely an adrenaline seekers or a thrill seekers sport, unless that thrill might be enjoying being on the river with your friends and enjoying gaining skill and being out in nature and all those things that you've just described. I think that's spot on. Absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Great. I mean, yeah, I think you, as my, I guess, parting advice for whitewater kayakers is I think it's really, really worthwhile sitting and thinking about the things that you really, really love about the sport. You know, what do you get out of it? And if you can have a go at like making a little list of the things that you get out of the sport, and you can even order them and go, this is what's most important to me about my days out on the river at the moment. Then suddenly you've got priorities, and you can act to make sure that your river days are the most fulfilling possible for you.
Yeah. Awesome.
There you go.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and see you next time.